Welcome.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay, guys, but I was scrabbling around tweaking the slides, as one does at the last minute. So today is good old me. And what I was going to do was just to go through some of the highlights of the recent Adobe updates. Don't worry, I'm not going to drag you through every feature. I'm just going to highlight two really, which I think are the most important. There are plenty of others, but those are the ones I think are most important. And the DPI conundrum, and we'll come to that later. So, what have Adobe done? Well, they've announced a new release, quite a major release of Photoshop and Lightroom Classic, and they've tweaked the icons. Interestingly, for Lightroom Classic, the icon now says LRC. There wasn't any corresponding announcement for the cloud version of Lightroom, so I don't know what that means. Whether that's coming later, whether Adobe are coming to their senses and realizing that real photographers want to have it all on their machine, not in some expensive hosted environment, I don't know. But for what it's worth, they made some improvements to Lightroom and improvements to Photoshop. So I was just going to go through both. Whilst we got this screen up, the two features I'm going to go through is on Photoshop, the better, faster portrait selection, because I think they made some improvements there that you guys probably will appreciate. The Adobe Raw improvements is just the user interface. It's just, you know, what it looks like and where things are. No great shakes there. On Lightroom, the performance improvements are interesting and noticeable. So the whole thing is faster, snappier. So if you have been struggling with that on your machine, you should notice an improvement. They've improved the user interface again. But the one feature that I'll go through today, which they keep banging on about, which, okay, is kind of interesting, although I don't really understand the big fanfare, but I guess lots of people have been asking for it, is the local hue adjustment. So when you're using the adjustment brush, you couldn't change the hue, but now you can. So I'll just demo that. And ISO adaptive presets are interesting only because if you have developing presets, you can set up Lightroom so that it will apply certain settings as part of your developing regime. And Robert was talking about, he has a look and feel that he applies. If you have a particular look and feel, you can set those into presets and very quickly apply them to your photos. What's important about this announcement is you can have different presets based on ISO, and that's useful, kinda, if, for example, you take a lot of pictures with high ISO, you'd probably want to use denoising, get rid of some of the noise in the picture. So your preset, you might have denoising or dehazing turned on and set to a value. But if you're taking photos with a low ISO, you probably wouldn't want that to be turned on. So now you can set them differently. And what happens is Lightroom goes and looks at the metadata in the photo and says, this is a low ISO picture, I'm going to apply this preset, or this is a high ISO picture, I'm going to apply this preset. So if that's useful to you, it's there now, and it wasn't before. But I'm not going to demo that because it's kind of boring. But I will show you the local hue. But first, let's go into Photoshop and have a little look as to what Photoshop can do for you now.
Hi, Chris.
Hello, Paul. Oh. So here's Photoshop, and what I'm going to do is open up a raw file within Photoshop. Do you all see the Adobe Raw?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the new interface. To be honest, life's too short for me to figure out what they've changed. But if you use this a lot, you'll probably notice some changes. But today I'm not really going to do much with Adobe Raw other than just go straight on and open the picture. So here it is. So we've got a portrait, and what they've done is they've brought out a new enhancement to the selection tool. So what I'm going to do is I need to be in, I think it's this. Right, so I'm in the quick selection tool and you'll see up here you've got a select subject button and a select and mask button. Now what's happened is the select subject button, they've improved what it does behind the scenes. So I'm just going to click that and it's made a selection of the subject, the person in the picture. This is particularly good for portraiture. And now I'm going to go to select and mask, and you'll see by looking at the transparency there, the hair has been pretty well isolated. And this is what they've done. They've improved this feature to get the hair isolated. And as you probably know, hair is one of the banes of your life if you're trying to do a cutout or a selection tool. But as you can see from this, if I sort of zoom in a bit, it's not done a bad job, particularly up around here. There's some fine detail there. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And, you know, you could use that. But let's cancel that and deselect it. And let's open a more complex picture. Now this one's interesting. I'm just going to tweak that a little bit and open it. Now this is interesting because we got a bit of noise in the picture. You can see there's quite a bit of noise going on and a complex background. So I thought this is a bit more of a test. So let's do that again. And let's select a mask. I don't know about you, but I think this is pretty bloody good. Look at that.
Yeah.
Really?
That's a real improvement to me. And, you know, if you've struggled with this like I have over the years, I think I'm probably going to use this quite a bit. So yeah, pretty good, considering what the background is. Yeah, the real complex background, and yet it's made a pretty good stab. Okay, so it's missed some hair up here. It's missed a bit there and there, but the overall, it's not completely missed it. What it's done is it's kind of a semi-transparent. It wasn't sure, so instead of making it a clear selection, it's made it a kind of a half selection. And of course, what you can do here is you can turn that into a cutout, and if I carry on and continue to do this and make a mask, let me just invert it and make a mask out of it. Oh, bugger, sorry. Now do that. You'll see you've got the standard mask here, and if you wanted to, you could go in and tweak it now and get some of this detail sharper if you wanted to. But as just, you know, a two-click operation, with a complex background and a noisy image, I don't think that's too bad. Not too shabby at all. So that's that. Let's skip over to Lightroom. We'll have a look at what Lightroom's doing. So I've got a couple of pictures here that I thought we could have a look at. If I go into the develop, let's open up the Okay, let me try going through another route. I found this the other day. It's not showing this new feature.
Fun. Enjoying.
Yeah, yeah, really good.
Good.
Whiskey is really good.
What's it called? The green whiskey?
No, it's Bushmills.
Are we talking about whiskey?
Yeah, we are. We're talking about Bushmills. Yeah, cheers.
Okay, I'm embarrassed to say, guys, I can't actually show you that feature because it's not showing it. And I've not figured this out. Has anyone else played with the hue feature yet?
Then you have to brush on,
Oh,
create a mask first.
It's a good job one of us knows what they're doing. You have to go into the adjustment tool. There it is. Thanks, Andrew. And then you show, this is the new thing here, the hue. And you've got a slider and you can move it around. And so I'm going to move it into the green area. And then because I've got an adjustment and I've got auto mask turned on, so it's going to detect the edges. If I want to, I can change the color selectively of one part of the photo. And if I want to, say, boost the something going on up here, you know, I can do that. And that's the new feature. You can now selectively paint hue into the picture, which you couldn't before. So, and you know, if you had to resort to Photoshop to do that before, now you don't.
That would be useful for infrared, actually.
It will. Cool. And the other one, there it is. I thought it might be fun just to change the color of one chick. Because I've got edge mask on, it's not doing a bad job of detecting the edge. And blah-de-blah-de-blah, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's changing the hue, but it's keeping all the texture and everything else going on. See, look, it's detecting the edge around the other chick there, which I think is quite clever. Yeah, you get the idea. See that area there? Look at what it did with that auto mask turned on. And if you want to do selective color changes to your pictures without resorting to Photoshop, this, you know, can be quite a powerful feature.
So we can put red umbrellas and everything now.
Say again?
We can put red umbrellas in every photo now.
You can make sure you've got red in every picture, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah,
Mutter.
that was the big thing in Lightroom. All the rest is kind of window dressing as far as I'm concerned. But the performance improvements are tangible. I've seen it on both my machines. So I would, and the backup as well. Periodically, when you close Lightroom down, it says, I want to do a backup of your catalog. And a few releases ago, that could easily take 10 minutes. Now it's seconds. So they've done quite a bit of work on improving these things. So that was that. So those were the Adobe updates I thought I'd go through. And if we now go back to the slideshow, the DPI conundrum, and that is, someone asked me this week, what DPI should I export at? And this comes up quite a bit. And on some of these calls, we've talked about 300 DPIs being, the optimum, da-di-da-di-da. So I thought I would have a go at explaining what's behind all this. The interesting thing is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So at the end of what I'm going to say now, I'm going to tell you it's all a load of rubbish and you don't have to worry about it. But I thought, say again, Chris?
I'll see you in a while then.
Yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. We're done. But I thought I'd better back up that statement because it's very easy for me to stand on a pedestal and say that, but it'd be better if I explain why. And so I thought I would attempt to do that. Don't get too hung up on the technicalities. I'm going to try and keep it as untechnical as possible, but we do have to understand a little bit about what's going on here. So, if we first look at electronic devices, these are the main 4 categories of device that are in circulation at the moment. 4K TV may not be ubiquitous, but it's catching on, one TV at a time. So I thought I would use these 4 devices as an example. And you might wonder, well, what's the resolution of these devices? Well, they're all much of a muchness, apart from the phone, which, being a small device, you would expect the resolution to be a little bit lower. But these devices, they're all pretty much in the same ballpark when it comes to pixels resolution. But what do you think's going on with DPI or PPI, pixels per inch? Dots per inch is when you're putting it on paper. Pixels per inch is when you're putting it on a screen. So PPI. So the picture is a little bit different in that the DPI or PPI of a phone is nearly 460 pixels per inch, whereas the TV is down at 63 pixels per inch. Now this is the latest Sony Bravia 4K TV I'm using as my example. So it's the latest technology. The other devices are all the latest devices. So they're all at the upper limit of what is now currently available on the market. But that's kind of a strange thing, yeah? You would think, well, so apart from the phone, the other 3 devices are all much of a muchness when it comes to pixel resolution. But the pixels per inch is vastly different. And the phone is vastly different too. Although it's got fewer pixels, the pixels are much closer packed together. And the reasoning for that is down to something called angular resolution. Now don't go blank on me, bear with. What we're looking at here is the human eye's ability to distinguish between 2 adjoining pixels. And it's all down to the angle of the dangle, as it were, as you see in the diagram. That it's not so much the distance apart, the pixel pitch, it's the angle that the eye can see to resolve those pixels. So it's down to the angular resolution, not necessarily. That translates to a pixel pitch, but not directly, because distance plays a part. Let's take a look at distance. How far from the eye is the device going to be that you're looking at? And if you look at the TV, it's out at 2 or 3 meters distance. I got these distances, by the way, from an optician's. These are average viewing distances, what they base glasses on. The average viewing distance of a TV is 2 to 3 meters. The angular resolution of your eye means that the pixels per inch doesn't have to be that dense. They can be further apart. That's why the TV has got such a low pixels per inch resolution or density. Whereas the other devices are getting closer and closer to the eye. And therefore the angle that you can resolve between 2 pixels is getting smaller and smaller, as the blue lines are indicating, down to the mobile phone, which is the closest device to your eye, where you need a pixel per inch density of, you know, nearly 460 pixels per inch. So when it comes to density of the pixels, pixels per inch, the viewing distance is what matters. So coming back to the big question, DPI, dots per inch. What dots per inch should I export my pictures at? It doesn't really matter until you've got to put it onto paper. Now, the average viewing distance for a print is about 30-35 centimeters. It's about the distance you would read a book at, about the distance you would use a tablet at, give or take. The density of pixels, we've said for many years now, is about 300. And actually, 300 dpi is about the optimum because of the angular resolution, because of the distance from the object. And if you look back at those charts for a tablet, it was getting on to 300 dpi resolution. And that's because a print and a tablet, you view them pretty much at the same distance. So that's why 300 dpi has always been in circulation, and people say 300 dpi is the optimum. If you translate 300 dots per inch into pixels, you get this. So a 6x4 print, 6 inches times 300 dots is 1800 dots. 4 inches, 1200. If you multiply up the inch size of the print by 300 dpi, it tells you how many pixels you need for a picture. And if you look at the biggest picture, the A4, those pixels translate to an 8.7 megapixel picture. So all of this means that if you're using a 10, 12, 24 or more megapixel camera, you've got more than enough pixels to produce an A4 print or even bigger. You've got more than enough to go on a screen. And all of that translates to this. The devices you're using automatically scale the image to optimize them for the viewing, for the best viewing experience. So your TV, if you put a 24 megapixel picture on a USB stick and plug it into the side, at 64 pixels per inch, the TV would have to be the size of your house. But what's happening is the TV is automatically downscaling the picture for you to the optimum pixels per inch to get the image the best possible quality on that TV. You can take that same picture and view it on your iPhone, and your iPhone will do exactly the same. It will downsize it to suit the 460 pixels density that it needs for the screen. You don't have to worry about DPI for electronic devices. When it comes to printers, when you're printing on paper, you can print, your printer will do its best to print at the maximum resolution. So if you throw a 24 megapixel picture at a printer that's going to print on a 6x4 print, it will automatically downscale it to 300 DPI to print at the best possible quality for you. Most defaults on the software for printing now assume this. Most devices that you've got on your desk or in your hand assume this. If you're not diving in and messing around with the settings, my recommendation is always export at the maximum resolution and ignore DPI because it really doesn't matter.
Well, that was very interesting then.
Now, does anyone want to argue with me? Because this is a controversial view, right? But if you go on a few websites, you'll see a lot of people saying the same thing. But I thought what I would do is try and put a little bit of the science behind it to try and explain to you why it is what it is. Anyone got a view or is upset by what I just said?
Anything else? Nor?
If you've actually got the proper magnifying glass that the printers use, you can't actually see a DPI on a photograph.
Yes, some printers will print at 1200 DPI or 600 DPI. But to be honest, on a print that you're going to look at around 30, 35 centimeters from your eye, you really won't see the difference between that and 300 DPI. You only really, professional printers print at 600 or 1200 DPI because sometimes they're producing things at A0 size or billboard posters that are going on the side of buildings.
Right.
And,
Does it matter if you think about social media, does the PPI matter depending on your social media platform?
some social media platforms will say we don't want a file bigger than so many pixels by pixels. So the DPI doesn't really matter. All you have to worry about is pixels by pixels. So if I go back to this guy here, this one here, all that matters is the number of pixels by pixels. So sometimes they'll say, we don't want it more than 1,000 pixels by 1,000. Well, that's easy. Sometimes they'll say, we don't want it more than a megapixel. Well, you can do that using Lightroom, and I'm happy to show you how. So let me stop showing you that.
Facebook and Instagram recommend 2048 along the long edge.
Yep. So if I go back to the library picture of this guy, and I go to export, if I come down into, let's export it as a JPEG, let's come down to resize, and what I'm going to do is click this box, and it's got megapixels there. If I click megapixels, it'll say, how many megapixels do you want? Well, I only want one. I'm going to ignore the resolution, and I'm going to export that picture. Just export.
Oh, that's new.
What's that doing? No, I don't want to do that. What are you doing? Whoa, I've no idea what that's doing. You can bugger off.
I think you exported it to a program.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
I think it was your HDR recipe. Yeah, Photomatics Pro. Export to Photomatics Pro at the top.
Thank you. I've been playing, as you can see. Golden rule when you're playing, always put it back. So, back to this, megapixel, 1 megapixel. So I'm going to export that. And now if I stop sharing that and I start sharing. So yeah, now share this. You should now see that that was the file I exported, and there's the image size, less than 1 megabyte. Yeah, so you can use Lightroom to export to a file size or to specific pixel sizes, whichever your social media account requires. Does that answer the question, Ange?
Can you export it directly to, like, to say Facebook or WhatsApp or?
Yeah, Lightroom does have linkages into those tools.
Facebook stopped it.
Did they? Yeah. I mean, personally, I wouldn't do it because I don't want all these tools linked up. Facebook gets enough data out of me. Thank you very much. They're not going to get my Lightroom linkages as well.
Lightroom cancelled it a while ago.
Yeah. But there are other social media linkages on there. But I find it easier just to export the picture to a folder on the desktop and then link it within the appropriate social media account.
Yeah, I've just got 2 recipes set up, that one exports it as a full size and one exports it as a 248 width.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this guy. So I hope I haven't completely confused you. I think the most important thing to remember is this. DPI is a hangover from the olden days, and with today's modern technology, just let it do its thing and you shouldn't go far wrong. And if you want to export to social media and there are file size limits, then fair enough. But I would say, where possible, do it by pixel resolution and get it down to something reasonable. So for example, with the website galleries, I always export stuff at 1920 by 1080 resolution, which is HD TV resolution. And that is just a bit bigger than I need for the website galleries. So there's the website gallery will do a little bit of downsizing for me, but not so much that there's a performance hit. Because if you're doing something like a website or social media and you upload huge, big images all the time, everything gets a bit slow and clunky. And also, arguably, you are sharing a picture that someone else could steal from you and reuse. I don't think it's a bad policy to export lower quality images to social media so that if they do steal it, at least they're not getting the best quality image. Okay, moving on. It's project vote time.
Wow.
We had 80 photos submitted, 28 members voted, 31 members voted, 28 members submitted. So drum roll please. Third place goes to Kevin. Congratulations, Kevin.
Well done, Kevin.
Where'd you take it, Kevin?
He's disappeared.
Are you with us?
Nice with the Woolwich.
Okay, we lost him. Second place, Tony.
Thank you.
Well done, Tony.
Thank you.
So what that is?
How did you get it? Was it a casual shot or did you plan it?
What's planned?
Yeah. Did you add the water yourself?
Sorry?
Did you add the droplets yourself?
Yeah, it's all planned.
Yeah. That's good. Well done. And
No, it's mine.
Dana, are you on the call?
I voted for that.
I'll vote for that as well.
Yeah. Well done,
Well done.
Ian.
I'm not sure if she's joined the call. Did you see her, Sue?
No, she hasn't
No.
this week. I
No,
think.
she's done well.
Isn't that an amazing photo?
Yes.
I would have asked her to explain it, but she did actually tell me it was taken on a mobile phone.
Wow.
What an incredible photo. Taken on a mobile. So well done, Shayna. I'll send the certificates out as soon as I can. And I'll update the galleries. Which just leaves one last item. We're short meeting tonight. Next month it's steps. Whatever interpretation you want to put on it is entirely up to you. So it could be someone taking steps. It could be someone doing a steps class at a gym, although that's probably not happening right now. Or it could be the traditional interpretation of stairs and steps and paving and all that kind of stuff. So you choose what your interpretation will be. Submissions by the 24th of July, please.
Okay. Kevin's just left a message. Photos back
again?
in the garden 3 weeks ago.
I couldn't hear that, Patrina.
Kevin's just left a message. He's put on there, the photo was taken in my garden 3 weeks ago.
In the garden 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
In the chat box.
Okay, yeah, I'm not looking at that. So, I mean, that's all I had for you this week, guys. Unless anyone's got anything you want to say, welcome to have a chat. Hi, Ron.
Right.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Sometimes if you heavily crop a section out of a photograph and you intend to print it, my printer will say this will not print at 300 dpi. Do you want to proceed? And quite often I say proceed, and I personally can't see the difference. But of course I don't know what the 300 dpi would have looked like, but I don't see any perceptible loss of quality. But you can only assume there would be. Is there any merit in upscaling, in other words, resizing, because that's interpixelation, isn't it? That's placing pixels alongside the existing pixels. And are there pitfalls with doing that?
There are pitfalls if you overdo it. You can get digital artifacts appearing. This is where the upscaling can't figure out whether it's red, green or blue or something in between. And if that happens too much, then you end up getting some kind of glitchy artifact appearing in the pictures. So I would say you can upscale, and the algorithms for upscaling are getting better and better all the time. When you look at sort of content-aware fill and what that's doing and working out what's missing, those same algorithms and the research is going into upscaling. So you can actually upscale quite a bit, but I wouldn't.
I'm not on there, am I?
I would experiment.
I'm not on
Oh,
there.
yes.
Oh, no.
Yes, you are.
We'll see, Joyce.
So yeah, I would say try it, Paul. And you know, if you don't like the result,
I do it quite a lot, upscaling, but I've got to say I don't really notice a fantastic amount of difference. The other thing is I do quite a lot of photo books, and when you upload them, I do upload them in the high resolution, and you know, a JPEG could be 12 megabits. And what happens, of course, is that the printer's own algorithms will reduce all those files down to a manageable level because they can't cope with having 300 or 400 images at 12 megapixels just for a little A4 photo book.
Yeah.
And I know that on some of the sites I've looked at, someone's done an FAQ and said, what's the preferred DPI or PPI? And they say 180 to 200 is what we will print at.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'd be printing out in an A4 book, even if you've got a full page image, that will be printed on the digital printer at 180 or 200 to a satisfactory level.
Yeah. Well, and if you go back to that angular resolution thing I was talking about,
yeah,
that was the maximum thing. So what you're looking at is the pixels going to be further apart, and depending on the viewing distance, you may or may not notice that. So if you think about the TV, where the pixels are, you know, a great distance apart, a 65-inch TV with only 65 pixels per inch, you know, that ain't a lot of pixels, and yet you're wowing at the quality of these 4K TVs. So it's all down to viewing distance and what the eye perceives, and the eye does an awful lot of post-processing. The brain is looking at the image and filling in the blanks a lot of the time. So yeah, you can get away with a lot more. What they're saying is, in order to max out the capabilities of human eye, no more than 300 DPI at that viewing distance. But yeah, you're right. You know, you can, there's wiggle room either side of that, definitely. But it's interesting to note that the printer is saying, I can't do this at 300. So it's trying to do it at 300.
It's got a mind of its own.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of the modern technology now, you know, they've overcome a lot of these problems. In the past, you had to have a degree in printing in order to get an image to print properly. Now, a lot of these tools, you know, they just do it and make some assumptions, and that is not an unreasonable assumption. You want the best possible quality on the print, so they'll do what they can to maximise that.
The continuing challenge is to get a print that looks like it does on screen.
Yes. Oh, while we're talking about that, I know it came up on a previous meeting about screen calibration.
Yeah.
And my son mentioned something to me which I hadn't thought of, but makes a lot of sense. A lot of modern laptops now have these features in them that protect your eyesight at night. So they turn down the blues and things like that at night, because too much blue on a screen at night upsets your sleeping rhythms. So a lot
like blue movies.
Say again?
Blue movies.
Not quite.
Fair enough.
So what these
Wondered where I'd seen him before.
doing is they're turning down the colours or changing the colour palette of the monitor at night. If you do your screen calibration at night, guess what happens? So you've got to make sure you turn off those capabilities before you do your screen calibration. Just a point if you are getting into that.
I was just going to mention, on the subject of digital books, photo books, I managed to get a sample, £100 worth of sample from a company called SAAL Digital. It's a German company, brilliant quality though, really, really good. So as a photography club, we may well get a sample from them, Ray. And it was £100 worth of book for nothing, literally nothing. And all they want you to do is write a review, and that's it.
Nice.
So SAAL Digital. I'm just trying to find it to show it up.
or S?
S for sugar.
Right.
But I think they gave it to me because of my web page, is what I think they did, because they ask for a web page and a URL and stuff like that. So I think they probably thought I was bigger than I am, which is fine because I still got my free book. But it's a hardbound copy. I opted for matte pictures just because it was cheaper, so we got more bang from a buck, if you like. But you can go for gloss ones, and you can go for a leather bound or cloth bound, or that's them, yeah. But I got the promotion because let's face it, that's what it is, through a Facebook advert, and I just thought, I thought they're not going to ask me for any money, they've not asked me for any bank account details, so I'll just go for it and see what happens. And it took 2 weeks, I think, to come through.
Well, yeah, interesting.
It is. You won't be able to see from there, but look, it's this is like a cloth bound one, and then inside they do the print direct onto the paper, but it goes right the way across, and you can do your own. You put your own pictures in whatever format you want it in, so you're not stuck with their format or anything. But they just, and I don't have much experience with photo books, but I just think it's worth mentioning. As a club, where you might get one. Like I say, it was £100 worth, but I didn't pay a penny for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly coming up to the end of the year, we normally do the photo book, don't we?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if we could, if we can get competitive with the service that Paul was using, then might be worth looking at. But equally, I guess we want to keep all the books looking and feeling the same. I don't know, but yeah, certainly worth looking at. Thanks, Angela.
No problems.
Cool. Anyone got anything else to say or share?
I was just going to say, the television, the 4K television that we're talking about pixels, you can actually view right up next to the screen, and the pixels are fantastic because this is what they're introducing, so that anybody near or back, where in the old television when you went up it just blurred it, now it's as clear as they can get it.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, and it's surprising when you realise the pixel density of a TV, but then it's a long way away from you compared with the mobile phone. So it's quite interesting seeing what they do, and there's a direct correlation between the viewing distance, and when you start to get your head around that angular resolution thing with the eye, it all makes sense, as that diagram was aiming to show. So yeah.
Bit concerned about our treasurer and a new 4K TV.
Oh, didn't you know? I've got two.
But I mean, how big is that TV?
Oh, you can 53 inch, 63 inches, really fantastic. When you go out up close.
I mean, you must be looking at it.
No, the only why I was
sunglasses on.
I was just reading there the other day about it. That was all.
Yeah.
We'll all come round and watch through the window. Watch it from the end of the road.
Yeah.
Now, regarding yes,
is the tram photographs on the internet yet?
Are the what photos?
One's of the tramp.
Yeah.
Tramp.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they? Have I missed
The
them?
edited. Yeah, they're in the galleries.
Are they? I missed it then.
Yeah, everything I got is up. Yeah.
It's the editing from Paul's editing photos.
That's it, yeah, I must have missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, you sold all your furniture, Tony? I'm just halfway through redecorating.
Halfway.
Were you on the call last week, Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I really liked your attempt. I thought it was great.
Did you have you ever tried ICC profiles?
I've looked at them, not really got into them in a big way.
It's well worth doing it because it matches your printer with the paper.
Right. Yes.
And it comes up pretty quick, pretty near to the what's on screen.
Yes.
They're free to use. You've just got to buy the paper and send it off to the company. It works very well.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, a few years back, I used to get into Hahnemuhle paper, which is quite expensive, and they were big into their profiles, and I did have a play, but never really got into it in a big way.
Yeah, they work. It's well worth doing.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Some get installed with your printer.
Yeah,
So
but
if
not
you've
the
got-
ones. If you've got a Canon, you've got all the Canon papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've got an Epson printer and I use Canon paper, but I just use the Canon profiles and they work fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of companies, printer companies, as well as the paper companies are, trying their best to help that. But I still struggle, I have to confess, with the whole printing thing. I can't believe in this modern society, with all the scientific achievements that has been done, how difficult it is to get a bloody image on a bit of paper.
Do you not use the soft proofing in Lightroom?
I don't use Lightroom for printing. I export JPEGs and then I use the software for the printer to print. I find
when you export the JPEGs, what color profile do you export them as?
I've experimented, but I normally just use the sRGB profile.
Yes, so you're exporting your JPEGs with a much smaller color space than what your printer can print at. So you're losing lots of the color information.
Yes.
Do you allow the printer to do it? Do you allow the printer to do it or the computer? Or Lightroom or Photoshop?
I allow the printer to do it using the printer's software.
Yeah, don't. Try Lightroom or Photoshop. The printer
has good results, but it's been a while since I've tried, I must confess.
Yeah, the printer messes it all up. It does, honestly.
Right. But to be honest, I don't print very often nowadays. Really don't print a great deal. Most of what I do is viewed on digital devices, and I share it with the family on shared albums online. So we do mostly everything electronically nowadays. We've got a few prints up in the house, but not that many. So, yeah.
Sounds like Tony's going to do an evening on printing.
I was thinking that.
You can do that if you want, Tony. You're welcome. All right, guys. I think I'll
still got to do the decorating.
Round, Chris.
Yeah, Ray's run out of beer, so we might as well call it a day.
Decorating will be finished next week.
Okay, good. All right, guys. I'll see ya.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye all.
Bye. Bye.